Forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
The Survival Command Center at the Pentagon has disclosed that a ghoul can be killed by a shot in the head or a heavy blow to the skull.
Plunging right through the surface to bring you another edition of the Midnight Black Mass. Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies. It has been a long time. I'm glad to be back here on the air via pottyhumor.com. Took a little bit of a break, had a lot of other projects going on. What we're pretty much going to talk a lot about that tonight. This week, and more so in the future, per popular demand from our listening audience, we're going to focus more on professional wrestling. I know you say, Rev, that's a fucking novel concept. You being a fairly well-known professional wrestling announcer and manager, why wouldn't you talk about professional wrestling? Well, the truth to be told, we really haven't. We've really avoided that in the almost 2 years now that the Midnight Black Mass has been in existence. We have a dedicated section of the program here called the Wild Side Chronicles. That certainly will continue in abundance, actually. I'm really looking forward to ramping that up as we move forward. But a lot of guys, both in and out of the sport, just they asked that I I lament on some things regarding professional wrestling and talk about my experiences and opinions and offer advice where I can, and that's it. I will offer it where I can. There seems to be an overwhelming insurgence of social media related wrestling how-to sites. Guys in the business not necessarily putting a face with the name, a lot of anonymous profiles that throw out a lot of rules for professional wrestling, and hey, you know, it as a performance art, a lot of rules that are very important and fundamentals that you need to stick with and learn, and you should never stop learning. You should never stop educating yourself about what you do. But to quote one of my all-time heroes, Mr. James Logan Howlett, if you live your life by too many rules, bub, sooner or later they're going to come into conflict with one another, and I do believe that's the truth. On the flip side of that, exactly the same thing that I just said. As a performance art, while there are important rules and fundamentals that are necessary in storytelling and getting over what you need to get over, there's also a lot of room for interpretation, and because it's not technically a competitive sport, it's not scored by touchdowns or home runs. It's about what sells tickets, and there's a lot of different things that'll do that, and any of them that does it, if it so happens to break one of these tried and true rules, that supersedes that rule, because the dollar sign is always right in professional wrestling. So anyway, I'm not coming on here, the Reverend, for once in my career, is not coming on here to preach to you. I'm just here to talk. I just want to talk about my experiences, my love, my genuine passion for professional wrestling that it's kind of lost me over the last couple of years. I'll be quite honest, and there's no one to blame for that but myself. I just pushed myself too hard, too long. I invest myself too deeply emotionally when I get involved in wrestling, and it takes a toll on me when my run's over. And it's been that way for years and years and years. And, you know, the older you get, you see, I'll be honest with you. Let's be fucking frank as we can. I'm Dan, by the way, not Frank. No, seriously, let's be as frank as we can. You get a little bitter. You've been at this, what I've been doing it like 15 years now. Almost 15 years. And you get told by all of your peers that you're one of the best at what you do. Whether that be announcing or managing or wrestling. You know, if you're one of the boys, you've gone through this too. You know what I'm talking about. But you push and you try to get opportunities, and you make stupid decisions and you shoot yourself in the foot, and those opportunities don't always come knocking twice. And so while you might not have anybody but yourself to blame, you still get a little bitter that you didn't go and make those millions of dollars like your buddies did. But then you sit back and think, and then it's not really bitterness. When you get down to the heart of it, it's just burnout. You just put so much, and I do feel bad for guys that don't have anything else beside that, besides professional wrestling. Gypsy Joe, my uncle, is the guy we're going to talk about in detail here on this week's episode, and you know, he's one of those guys. He lived, he breathed, he slept professional wrestling his entire life, and now, in his golden years, when he doesn't have that anymore, he's really incomplete, and it really bothers him, and that really sucks. I've got a lot of other interests. You can check them out here at pottyhumor.com. I'm an avid comic book fan, and we have a weekly show here. Midnight Black Mass has been far from weekly, but you can check us out weekly here at pottyhumor.com with the Get Your Pulls comic cast, where we review comic books, talk about comic book news, tell bad jokes, shoot the bull, have a good time. Just a bunch of guys talking their love of comics. So tonight, going to make the Midnight Black Mass about my love of pro wrestling and what happened to it and how I got it back. And it's not like no wrestling promotion is to blame. First of all, you know, I to give the biggest shout out and respect to the Wild Side Anarchy family. They're doing great things down there still in Cornelia, Georgia. I'm taking a break from there for a while. Just want to be closer to home with my daughter Lorelai, now almost 2 years old. Hard to believe that. Wow, how time flies. But you know, sticking closer to home. So I'm staying away from super long road trips, unless they're worth missing the time. And honestly, the dollar sign on that's pretty high these days. But certainly, with the right opportunities, it happens. You'll see the Rejects back out on the road this fall. We always like to get out there around the Halloween season. Promoters really want to bring us in due to the whole vibe that the Devil's Rejects gimmick and persona brings. And so we've been in talks with a couple of different new promoters that we're going to be debuting for this fall in and around the Atlanta area. Looking forward to that. One of them's a pretty big opportunity, so that's going to be fun. So let's talk about what's been going on in the interim. Been involved a lot with Empire Wrestling in Rossville, Georgia, as you've heard. They actually helped me host the Gypsy Joe Benefit back on August the 10th at their arena at 22 Austin Avenue in Rossville, Georgia. You can find out more about this great group at facebook.com/Empire Wrestling. It's a group founded by a former wrestler himself and a guy who's very well respected here around this area, Drew Delight. If any of you remember the old NACW promotion out of North Carolina, used to have the syndicated TV in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Right around the time Wildside was big, so they were kind of a competing organization, I guess, in the loosest sense of terms. But yeah, Drew was a top guy up there, and he did a lot of good traveling, and he's actually one of the first guys I ever managed, believe it or not, for the late Ron West, who we just lost pretty recently in the time that the show was off. Ron West, if you don't know who he was a legendary referee, actually, all over the NWA territories in the 80s, but very, very prominent in Continental. Once he retired, he actually ran several independent shows himself, with his sons being heavily involved in the promotion as well. and worked for them. Really one of the first legit promoters I ever got to work for that was, that actually handed you a pay envelope. And but also put you in there with guys who knew what they were doing. A lot of the old Smoky Mountain regulars, Dirty White Boy, and what was the big dude? The big dude that was the bodyguard. He was like their version of Killer Kyle. Killer Kyle worked a bunch of those shows. And of course, I got early encounters with Terry Gordy, and really where I first got to meet him and start getting to know him a little bit. Tommy Rich, some of those guys, just this really my infancy. God, I was such a pup. I didn't know anything. As we say here in Saudi Daisy, I didn't know shit from apple butter when it came to professional wrestling at that time. But Ron West was kind enough man to help me out. Drew Delight was kind enough man to let me come out of the ring with him and pretend like I was a manager, but he actually gave me advice, and we worked together a couple of times. And so anyway, we formed a bond years ago, went our separate ways, as many guys in the industry do. You meet somebody, you work with them for a period of time, you get close, and then duty calls, and another promoter wants you here, another guy wants you there. Your life decisions take you to a different region. And that's the last you see him. So many guys have came in and out of my life over the last 15 years of guys that I just met in passing, created a brief but strong bond with, and then they disappear. And you don't hear from them again, and it's not like, I know it's probably hard for people on the outside to fathom, because if you're not in the wrestling bubble, you don't really get how you can talk to somebody for just a short time and then never see them again and not think they're an asshole. You don't. You just understand. You're part of that brotherhood. It's the way of the world. It's the way of the road. Everybody's trying to do the best for themselves and their family. Yes, it is a family camaraderie atmosphere. Absolutely. But also, part of that code and that brotherhood is knowing that everybody's got to do the best for themselves and to put food on the table for their families. And if that means sticking it out in pro wrestling and trying to eke out a living that way, then that's what you do. If it's going and giving up professional wrestling and doing something else that's more stable, that's what you do. You're always a part of the brotherhood if you've really contributed. And so me and Drew Delight hooked up years later down the road. He worked for me some when I was promoting the NWA Chattanooga brand. I'll probably talk more since we're moving in more of a wrestling direction on this show. I'll talk more about that whole rise and fall of that down the line. But so we hooked back up and, of course, caught up and just sharing ideas, and Drew always has an infectious enthusiasm for wrestling. So he started this Empire Wrestling a few years ago down there in Rossville, and they've really come up. They started using guys that were very centrally located to that area. Not the best workers necessarily, but definitely guys that wanted to be there. They've built off of that. They've gotten guys from around the stronger regional promotions. Your guys are more prominent in the Nashville-Knoxville area. Some guys that are more prominent like in Georgia. Your Anarchy, Wildside, Rampage type guys. And kind of brought the veterans of some of those crews up. And they've really formed a synergy there. And they've got a good booker. I'm not going to out him because I always hated being outed as a booker publicly. That's another rant for another time. But I've had several booking jobs in my career, many booking television, and I never ever wanted to be outed like when I'm done. Fine, examine the body of work as a whole. Fine, but I always feel like if you know who the booker is, then you have that deep down preconceived, possibly subconscious notion of the way things are going to go, and it definitely affects the way you view the product. If you don't know who the booker is until after their run's done, I think you get a much better feel for them as opposed to analyzing their motives behind every little move. So, but there's a fantastic booker that Drew has hired. Is a good friend of mine, not me, but a good friend and somebody who I trust really has the heart of pro wrestling in mind and has the experience and knowledge to pull it off. And so they really assembled this great crew. We've done some really good business there, man. I tell you, they wanted to bring in the rejects, wanted to do the whole deal that we do, which is the rejects will come in and they'll beat everyone and their mother to death figuratively speaking, of course, but within an inch of it, and we'll run roughshod over everyone, and they'll rally the troops, and they'll fight, and they'll beat us back, and usually we'll leave. We may come back for a deal or two here or there, but, you know, that's the business of it. It's an old school mindset. It's very territorial, but it works for us. We've done good business everywhere we've gone. We've sold out at least one of the big climax matches. And in some cases, we sold out big buildings with it. So, you know, it's worked. Empire saw that. Was one of many smart promotions to bring it in and let it run its course. Sure enough, go to the War Games, they sell it out. And that's not patting us on the back. That's just I'm stating facts. If anybody had any questions or was curious, I'm stating you put us in that position, we'll deliver the goods. I'm not saying we can do everything. I'm not saying that we're grand superstars, that they'll plop down $1 million to get our autograph or see us. But I'm telling you, if you put us in that position and you let it ride to the finish, then it'll do business. It's done it everywhere, and it did it at Empire. So normally we leave when that happens, or we'll come back and do a few things. So we did that at Empire, and eventually the fan response was so strong that we had no choice but to flip the script a little bit. And that was, and trust us, you know, this is not us out here pandering for it like some of these guys do. You see some of these guys who are supposed to be heels, and they're, you know, they see it on TV. They're young, you can't blame them, but listen, guys, listen, don't do that. You're supposed to be a heel. Get heat. Get the fucking heat, man. Get the fucking heat, because you gotta service the business at hand, the match at hand, what you're doing down the road. You gotta service all of that. So if you're out there pandering to the fans and you're supposed to be a heel, you're not doing yourself any favors, because you're not servicing the overall story or the big picture. And so you know, we're doing everything. I mean, for God's sakes, Tank punched a woman and they're still just cheering us like crazy. So they wanted to keep going with it instead of having us bail, and we stuck around, and now we're fan favorites. And it's a strange place to be in, because it is a bit of foreign territory, but like I said, as long as they're buying tickets, we'll be there, and once they stop, then we won't be. But beyond what we're doing, they've got a lot of great talent there, and you really should check out Empire Wrestling. Actually, they've got their next event coming up this Saturday, August 31st, at the Empire Arena. Going to be headlined with a street fight between Ace Rockwell and Matt Fortune. They were also kind enough to, as I mentioned earlier, let me host the Gypsy Joe Benefit show there. And I just want to talk a minute about that, and just what an honor it was to do that for him. Joe was a guy, been a very important part of my life. Really one of the main inspirations for me getting into professional wrestling. Weren't incredibly close growing up. He actually was more like this mystical superhero figure to me in my very young days. I didn't really meet him until I was probably 5 or 6 the first time, and then just, you know, kept in very, very minimal contact with him, but was just always fascinated by him. And so as I got into my teen years, I got to go up to visit with him in Nashville and spend a summer, a time or two, and really, really get to know him, and really spend some legitimate time with Gypsy Joe. And he taught me an encyclopedia's worth of professional wrestling knowledge, for one. And two, he looked out for me. And, you know, for better, for worse, because Joe never, ever minced words with anybody, or never was shy about stating his opinion. And some people still to this day don't like him for that. But the majority of his peers consider him an icon and a legend, and I do as well. So it was very important to me and to my family that I do this benefit show. So we arranged this thing, and that alone is one of the reasons I haven't been on the air. Honestly, I have been busting the damn streets down, buddy, trying to promote that benefit show. and just and it was a success. So it was about a month of really hard work, and didn't cost me a dime because the love for Joe, people were willing to give promotion time, whatever, to help out with the promotional effort, and we got a nice audience there. We raised about $1,000 for Joe. Some nice auction items that were donated. And it was really, really a great night. We had, Wolfie D, or now a really very cool gimmick that he's doing, by the way, Cerebrus, the Lycan Assassin, or Cerebus, rather, the Lycan Assassin. Very werewolf-inspired gimmick. He's kind of been doing that since he dropped the rap gimmick and was doing Slash down in the new church for old Jimmy Mitchell's Disciples of the New Church deal. But it's really professional, major league. He was talking about this group he's working with out of Arkansas called TCW. That's apparently got some major fundage behind them and some really strong TV clearances. So hope something comes of that. The more for the business, all the better. And I really appreciated him taking his time. Gypsy Joe trained Wolfie D, actually. So I really appreciated him taking his time to come down there to Rossville, Georgia, and he had a hell of a match with all that Adam Jacobs, man. They tore the joint down. And our intense rivalry with the Illuminati ended that night. Those kids, they put us through the ringer there at Empire Wrestling, but we finally defeated them in a losing stable disbands. And so the Illuminati, they had a disband there on the Gypsy Joe Benefit show. Had guys from all around. Skinny Kenny Arden, so good to see him. I don't know how many of you remember him. If you're from the Nashville area, you definitely will. A lot of you from Georgia will too, as the Centerfolds. You remember that shtick from the 90s. North Georgia Wrestling, Music City Wrestling, Wildside, those guys were all over. But Skinny Kenny was there to pay his respects to Joe. It's always good to see him. God, who else? Larry Cheatham. I believe Jimmy Powell might have even stopped by. If Jimmy Powell didn't stop by, he shared a wonderful story about Joe on the Empire Facebook page. He was talking about when he was finishing up with Georgia Championship Wrestling. He was stuck down there. He was broke. He didn't really have a place to go. Joe was getting ready to go home. Well, they'd already furnished, he had like a furnished apartment there at the Falcon's Rest, and he just bought groceries and filled it up, and he gave him the keys and gave Jimmy the place to stay, to just show what a big heart Joe had. I've seen some other workers, old timers, talk about how Joe was kind of difficult sometimes, and I'm sure he was, because he's got a temper on him today. But and I heard he was just hospitalized again. But the benefit effort continues, and if you want to be a part of that, please support it. I'm still working on trying to get a GoFundMe project together with his daughter and all. His daughter Janae Bill is the person in charge of his affairs legally, so she's kind of footing the bill for his medical expenses, which are starting to pile up pretty badly, I had to say. So the first event will help, of course, but also coming up, Mike Porter and Main Event Wrestling out of Gallatin, Tennessee, going to be holding another Gypsy Joe Benefit Sunday, September 6th with a 7 p.m. Central Bell Time. It's going to be at the VFW Hall in Gallatin, Tennessee at 266 Morrison Street. And you want to check that out. September 6th, 7 p.m. Bell Time, Central Time. A lot of the great Nashville areas. I know I saw Dante and Mephisto, who were big friends of Joe's. He loved those guys, so very cool to see them coming out of retirement for this, the Gypsy Joe Benefit, and I'm sure many other Nashville area regulars will be there. And then also coming up on October 13th in Shelbyville, Tennessee at the Big T Arena on 316 Holland Street from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. having yet another Gypsy Joe Benefit show, that brought to you by the folks down at the SWF and the ESWF in Tullahoma, Tennessee. So make sure you support those efforts. It certainly is appreciated if you do, from my family, from Joe, and for everyone who's supported him throughout the years. You can check out a nice little tribute video I did for him over on my YouTube page. That's youtube.com/Dan Wilson, actually. And or you can just search Gypsy Joe tribute video. It was really my first stab at any solo video editing that I actually cared to put my name on. I remember going back to the old days of Wildside Television. Me and Andrew Thomas used to sit up very late in the nights, and he would show me some little small tricks of the trade of video editing, and so I kind of learned a little bit back in the day and got to put that to use. Certainly don't claim to be a professional at it, but it was fun, and maybe I'll continue to edit some videos for some of the things we got going on. But like that video skyrocketed. It's now under like 1,000 views, and it had 700 views within like 2 days. So that was pretty crazy. I do appreciate the response. Even the assholes who still had to find some mean-spirited shit-talking to do about a Benefit event. Good job. Pat yourself on the back, fellas. I hope you're doing something to help someone else out. Because if not, you're just a shit-talking cunt. End of rant. End of rant. Sorry. Sometimes our emotions get the best of us. Don't you understand? You gotta fight that. A Jedi is not ruled by emotion. As I mentioned, you're going to see more of the Rejects out and about with the Rejects Reanimated 2013 tour. Look for us out in a city near you here in the fall. Got a brief little bitch gripe I want to go to before I start plugging DragonCon. And that's what I call the Indy Wars with a Z. Indy Wars. What is it? What are Indy Wars, Rev, you might ask? And I might have an answer. Sip of cream soda. Yeah, it's late at night. I'm drinking cream soda. Not very customary of the Rev, but I got a big week coming up, so gotta stay away from the booze. And I got a kid that's gonna be getting up really early, and that shit just don't fly when you're 30. When you're 25, you can pound brews every night and just go. Now it's a couple of month occasion for me if I'm lucky. That's what happens when you get older and wiser. You age like a fine wine. But anyway, what are Indy Wars? They're rats fighting over crumbs. And I don't mean arena rats. I mean mouse with a big sharp teeth. Them kind of rats. I get so sick and tired of seeing small indie shows fighting with each other over this and that. And really, like, I'm not going to be the he without sin casting the first stone here, because I've been guilty of it. I get hot-headed sometimes. I run my mouth. I know and will readily admit most of the time it's a bad idea, because business just isn't done that way. But now we have this forum where anybody can say anything, so when someone's an asshole, it's hard not to respond. But in any event, Indy Wars are like rats fighting over crumbs. Why is this? Look at the pie, folks. Look, imagine the wrestling business as one giant peach cobbler. Okay, am I creating a visualization for you here? Creating a picture. One giant peach cobbler. The WWE owns 80% of that peach cobbler. They've taken their bite. Ain't much left. There's enough left. There's still like 18% of that cobbler that TNA is swooped in and took. And so now, all 8,700,546 independent professional wrestling promotions in the country are fighting off of 2% of that cobbler. So you got 2% of the cobbler, folks. 2%. And you got all of us fighting over it. All of that dollar, all of that, and it's... So, it's really not much to begin with. The good independent shows, dime a dozen. That's life on the indies, folks. I've always kind of tried to kayfabe that or you know, keep that under the radar, that it's not a glamorous, you know, I don't know, it's just, fuck, it's the old school codes that I was raised by that you just don't talk about businesses. Ain't nobody's fucking business what you're making on the road. But indie wrestling's not a very glamorous lifestyle. I don't think we're fooling anybody. I think, you know, the wrestler, you know, you had a major motion picture about the way kind of the indie wrestling works. So couldn't say most indie shots are terrible. The pay is terrible, but you get some good ones. It's not like if you're talented, if you're me, then and you're the Rejects or you're Ace Rockwell or Sean Tempers or Tank or Slim J or you know any number of the standout guys from this region, you can go and get booked places where it's worth your while. But most of the time, it ain't worth your while. And that's why 15 years in, I'm just not getting out of the house unless you make it worth it to me. I got better things to do. I got a million creative endeavors I'm tied up in. I've always got a way to entertain myself, but that's just it. That's why we're back to this tonight. I love professional wrestling with my heart and soul. It is a part of me. It flows through my veins, and I cannot deny it, and I won't deny it. But I'm not going to be shortchanged or treated like some kind of mark or some kind of fucking chump because I didn't fall off the turnip truck yesterday, kids. I've called more fucking television matches, just matches that actually made the air, than a lot of you motherfuckers ever had in a fucking ring. Not to mention matches I've worked at ringside. Hell, even the dumbass manager matches, I've probably worked half a fucking dozen of those more than some of you guys have had fucking actual wrestling matches. So fuck off if you got a problem with it. But what I'm saying is, the fighting is stupid. I see a lot of that in this area. You know, and even at Empire, we had somebody who stole some of the posters down there, you know, and oh, it was a big ordeal, and of course it got blamed on a rival promotion. I don't know who did it. I don't know that they did. If they did, fuck them, but still, even so, if they didn't, it doesn't matter. They shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be doing it. It's unprofessional behavior. You should focus on your product and sell tickets by presenting the best product. Period. End of story. And as far as the boys taking sides on his whole deals, it's like, that's the one thing that really gets me, because it is professional wrestling, and I wonder, are you doing it just to stroke your own ego, or do you really believe there's some sort of loyalty here? Most indie promotions you didn't help build. Like, this Empire deal's a little different because we kind of got it on the ground floor with them, and I act in many ways as a consultant there. I don't have any power per se, but they ask my opinion a lot, and I give it. So, fucking, I have a little bit of investment there from that perspective, but still, it's like, we're all trying, this is a business. If you're at the show down the block, which, I mean, is still a couple towns over, right? Then when you finish up there, you might want to come work at Empire. Or when you finish up at Empire, you might need to go down the road to the other show. So why are you talking shit? Why are you taking sides? Ain't none of these people paying you a fucking salary. I mean, take sides in that, yeah, do right by the people that do you right, but don't go burning the bridges. It's just bad business. And that's another thing, and I'm going to call you out, buddy, and I hate to do it because I love you, but Danny Only, stop tagging me in your bullshit about fucking your war on indie wrestling. Like, I get it. People that fucking suck are a disgrace, and they are hurting us badly, but you know how you win that fight? You just be better. You succeed. And because if you waste so much energy on eliminating the negative, you're going to lose somewhere along the way your ability to focus on the positive and focus on bettering yourself. Don't worry about what these assholes are doing, because they ain't worrying about what you're doing. And they're derailing you. And that's not just, and I'm not picking on my boy, but that's anybody. That's anybody that goes on these crusades. I know, and I'm not telling you because I sat and watched somebody do it. I've been that guy. I've been that guy, and it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of effort, and it will leave you hateful and fucking miserable, and you don't want to be like that. You need to worry about what you're doing. Focus on succeeding in yourself. That's all about that rant. But stop the fucking Indy Wars, please. Rats fighting over cheese. Can we all just be satisfied with our 2% of the cobbler and not try to fucking eat each other's cobbler? That's all I gotta say about that. I'll have more rants like that as we move forward to a more wrestling-based product here on the Midnight Black Mass. I'll be looking at things that They get up my crawl. Like, understand, I don't really get mad about this shit because I'm one of the most laid back guys in the business. Like, I do get emotional about shit from time to time, but overall, you know, I'm chill and I'm just speaking, and I'm speaking from experience. So if you don't like it, there's people way more experienced than me that'll tell you different shit. They might tell you the same shit, but you don't have to listen to me. But if you do, I thank you, and I'm glad you're here. And coming up this weekend is the big one. This is really what I am more excited for than anything ever in the year. This is the best booking of the year for me. It is, it's my vacation, actually. The booking is just a bonus because it pays for my comic books. DragonCon 2013. You can catch me live along with the Strong Style Psycho Tank and the Angel of Death Azrael at one point or another for DragonCon Championship Wrestling this coming Friday at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. DragonCon covers all the major hotels in downtown Atlanta. Downtown's basically going to be shut down, where all the freaks, geeks, nerds, weirdos, and the like, all of my kind of people, converge on downtown Atlanta and turn it into hedonism for Star Wars fans, essentially. It's truly a thing of beauty. It's about the 7th year I've been. This is only the 2nd year that I will be staying the duration. I'm going to be staying down at the Omni, baby. The Omni Hotel, beautiful downtown Atlanta. And the Hilton, the Hyatt, the Marriott, the Westin, and the Sheraton all will be housing nerd activities of some sort. There'll be a costume contest, parades, parties, probably an orgy or two. Those are all up in the hotel parties. You got to have VIP access to get. From what I hear, it's not that hard to get. So it's a party. Everywhere you look, it's a party. There's going to be a lot of famous people there, too. Hey, William Shatner's going to be there with me. George Takei. What about fucking Neil Adams? Oh, yeah, one of the seminal Batman artists, writers of all time. Malcolm fucking McDowell. That's right, Malcolm McDowell. Alex from A Clockwork Orange. Most recently, Dr. Lewis from Halloween. Sarn from Star Trek. Metallo in Superman the Animated Series, and 8 million other great roles throughout his illustrious and legendary career. Liam McIntyre, Spartacus himself, is going to be there, as well as Manu Bennett, who is known as Crixus in Spartacus. Also Deathstroke from the Arrow TV show, as well as John Barrowman from Arrow, who played none other than Merlin. And also comic legends George Perez, Peter David. You got the cast of The Walking Dead, like almost all of them. Many of the cast of True Blood, Smallville, Adventure Time, Futurama, King of the Hill. It's gonna be a time, and that's just like the stuff that I'm into. Billy D. Williams is gonna be there, and Ernie Hudson, and it's just insane. Lou Ferrigno. You just have to be there. You just have to be there. Go to DragonCon.com. They're still selling tickets, though. They're going fast. They are capping attendance at 80,000 this year. So you definitely want to get in there and get your passes if you haven't. But if you did, I'll see you out on the con floor. Me and my lovely wife, we have got our cosplay together for DragonCon. Going to be doing that on Saturday night, by the way, because got to work Friday, so keeping the cosplay and the work separate. But Saturday night, I will be Zombie Opie from Sons of Anarchy. Sorry if that's a spoiler if you're not caught up. And my wife's going to be going as Harley Quinn. Now you say, oh man, there's 8 million Harley Quinns at DragonCon. And that's true. But my old lady's creative. She's not like all these other motherfuckers who just got to buy her costume or copy it straight off. She invented her own. So she's going to be bedtime Harley. It's a very sexy outfit. I'm very happy to be parading around with her on my arm at the con as we get smashed and meet all kinds of cool people. And for what seems the first time in forever, now you got a kid, these opportunities only come around about once a year. But to really have we had our family vacation, now we have the adult vacation, and it's going to be a wild time. DragonCon, come on down. We're going to tear Atlanta apart, man. It's going to be great. You got to be there this weekend. And if you're in Atlanta, just follow the costumed people and they'll take you to the party. Just in remembrance, briefly, I was looking on the old social media and saw that this is the same month we lost Ted Allen a year ago and Skandor Akbar, I believe, 3 years ago. Two greats. We're moving this in more of a wrestling direction, so let's talk about those guys for a second. Ted Allen, what a guy. Class act. One of the nicest guys I ever met. One of the smartest. There was a smart, thrifty guy. He continued to make a living off wrestling from the good years to the lean years and all the way in between, and was always quick to dispense wisdom to the younger generation. Of course, he trained the great Kyle Matthews, or at least polished him. Kyle Matthews, it's like he's the only guy he trained right now. Kyle's the greatest current active guy, certainly, and his last surviving protege and the last piece of his legacy. But let's not forget he trained Arn Anderson, Big Boss Man, Scotty Riggs, many of the top guys to come out of Georgia. And so, R.I.P. Ted. It was a pleasure knowing you, man, and I hate that we didn't get to know each other better. We spent a lot of time around each other, but some guys you just don't open up to, you don't talk to as much. But every bit of knowledge and wisdom that Ted dispensed to me, I value it, and it was fantastic. And then a guy that I never got to meet, the General Skandor Akbar. What a manager! What an influence on me as well. I think he's one of the really unheralded influences. I used to get off the bus for elementary school around 3 o'clock, and I would actually go to my late great-grandmother's house, and we would sit there and watch World Class and later USWA and Global on the syndicated television. And Skandor Akbar was a man that we hated together that later I grew to love and admire, and he really gets overlooked when you start talking about the great managers. He's really one that really belongs up there with Gary Hart, with Bobby Heenan, with Cornette. He really delivered the goods. Everybody remembers Devastation Incorporated, and that stuff was fantastic. That's what the NWA Elite, and to a lesser extent the Devil's Rejects, were modeled after. The Rejects moving around more, the Elite kind of stayed in one place more. But the Devastation Inc. philosophy of you have the manager with the rotating stable. The manager's always going to be there. Stable is guys coming in and out of the territory. So just extremely influential on all of us. But you go back to my favorite stuff that he ever did was Hacksaw Duggan and Kamala in Mid-South, and just some really incredible stuff with his promos during that feud. So you really should go look up and check out, and maybe some of it will be on this upcoming Mid-South release that's allegedly coming out by the WWE. So that's pretty cool. Here's something funny wrestling related I'll talk to you about for a minute. So, when I was a kid, it was like a year where me and my best friend kind of stopped watching wrestling. I don't know what the hell we got into, but kind of got burnt out. It was like summer of 93 to summer of 94. We kind of laid off wrestling. Still watched the big shows, still watched all the pay-per-views, but never watched the weekly stuff. Didn't see what was going on. So, through the magic of YouTube, I've somehow found all of the 1993 Monday Night Raw episodes in succession. So I went back and watched them. For a time, that is generally shit on by smart wrestling fans because of the heavy reliance on gimmicks. There was some fantastic fucking wrestling during that year, let me tell you. And from guys who didn't have that reputation, like I watched Marty Jannetty and Bastion Booger tear it down for 15 minutes. And that's not a slight. Like, Marty Jannetty, always been known as a good hand. Bastion Booger, Norman Lunatic, Mike Shaw was always known as a big guy. But, man, he was doing, excuse me, he was doing impressive stuff. I just got to say. But, interesting time because it was, right after the steroid trial, Hogan had kind of just phased out. So they were going with smaller guys. It was like, if you recall, the early days of Bret Hart's big solo runs, and Scott Hall and Shawn Michaels and all of those guys that really made the late 90s. That was really where they were coming in. A lot of good wrestling. You still had Kurt Hennig on the card. You still had Crush, who was pretty underrated for a big muscle head worker. You know, like I thought he delivered the goods in all of those matches. But Doink the Clown, and rest his soul too. We lost him during the break, and that's unfortunate, man. I really, and I hate to say it, but I did not have a proper appreciation for Matt Bourne, Doink the Clown. You go back and watch, he's one of the strongest guys carrying the show during that year. Loved him as the evil clown. He later went babyface, and it was entertaining, but that first stuff was pretty revolutionary in all honesty, and he was having the best match on the card like every night. So I don't know. Just some random observations from a time that I didn't remember very frequently. Interesting to see what you thought about the 1993 WWF period. Tatanka, he was a guy that they really pushed hard during that time that kind of disappeared thereafter. But he was really good, and the people were with him. So I'd be curious to know what even happened with him. But that was a very, very entertaining time. And one last thing about WWF 1993 before I let you go. Randy Savage. Randy Savage, certainly without a doubt, you could watch Randy Savage wrestle over and over and over again. Cut promos, one of the most entertaining personalities, great workers, total package. In addition to all that, he was the fucking man on commentary. Really, really, really enjoyed hearing Savage on commentary during the duration, and he's been part-time wrestler during this run, but mainly on commentary, and it's entertaining every single time. So anyway, go onto YouTube and just type in WWF 1993, and you're gonna get plenty of results for the Raw that I'm watching. You can check up. I'm almost through the year, so I'll be going into 94 soon and seeing what I missed there, and then YouTube is a wealth of wrestling stuff. There's so much out there, and some of it's licensed, some of it isn't. Some of it's like territorial shit that never got licensed that you can't get anywhere else. So very much worth checking out and worth flipping through. The Wild Side Chronicles will continue here on the show. Still have Tank, who actually just moved 5 minutes down the street from me. So we're gonna have a very entertaining Wild Side Chronicles with him coming up soon. Also, All That Adam Jacobs is coming up soon. And a whole lot more. And don't forget to check out the AJ Styles autobiography coming up, which I'll be involved in. That'll be coming out in October. You can follow him on Twitter at AJStylesOrg for more info on the release date and the specifics of that. And follow me on Twitter at Dragons Rejects. Make sure to check out the website, pottyhumor.com, YouTube/pottyhumor. This entire episode will be available there. And right now we're going to go ahead and kick it to our pre-recorded interview with our special guest tonight. It's a man by the name of Raven Mack. He's a writer, he's a poet, he's a philosopher. He's a street people of the hills of Virginia, and is a former rapper. He's a very interesting guy, also very good friends with the band Lamb of God. And just led a very interesting life. Also a huge wrestling fan, and he's been on the program before. He's got some new philosophies and some new things he wants to talk about. So he'll be back. This was pre-recorded a couple of weeks ago during the downtime. So this will be our first interview back from the break. And thank you for joining us this week, folks. The Midnight Black Mass will continue. The schedule, probably not going to be weekly. I'll be realistic with you. But I'm going to try to pump out at least 2, hopefully 3 a month for you right now. But very glad to be back. And honestly, therapeutic, taking it away from the horror variety show theme a little bit and just talking what I know, pro wrestling, and we'll continue to do that and anything else, because the format is out the window now. That is the new format. But with us being on YouTube and things, you got to be careful about using music. I know it falls under fair use in many circumstances, but I tell you what, if you miss the music, go on over to decibelgeek.com or go on to wawl.org. You can hear either the Decibel Geek podcast by my buddy Aaron Camaro, or you can hear the Metal Empire show by my buddy David Pierce. Both of those play the same type of tunes we were playing here. But now moving to YouTube, I'm going to try to monetize this thing and move it forward. We can't be using songs because then we're going to have to pay other people, and, well, we don't want to do that. So, thank you for joining
TawnyHumor.com. It is my pleasure at this time to announce our special guest and welcome him to the program, returning for his second appearance on the Midnight Black Mass, Raven Mack from the hills of Virginia. How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, Dan. Pretty good. How you doing, man?
I am doing excellent. It's a fucking beautiful summer day. I spent it kicking it with my clan. We grilled out, had some cold beers, listened to some Buck Owens, and I'm still having them cold beers. How about you?
Just chilling, man. My old lady and my oldest kid went away for the weekend, so I got my 5- and 9-year-old, and we just kind of kicked it in the yard all day long.
Hey, that's the life, man. It really doesn't get any better than that, honestly.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it.
Yeah, so what you been up to lately? I see you got a lot of projects. You sent me your zine, the Primordial. Come on.
Primordial Traditionalist, JJ
Primordial Traditionalist.
Recession Proof. I give each one a different name, man.
Well, that one was fantastic. I loved it.
We're just staying busy out here, man. I got, my old lady's an herbalist, so she's doing her thing. She's, teaching up in Maryland this weekend. I don't know what the hell I am. I ain't figured it out yet. But, I'm doing my thing, still writing my words, putting them to paper, doing this or that. We're just doing what we can, man, It's like anybody. We're just doing what feels right.
Well, you touch on a lot of interesting topics. You have definitely your own perspective on things in your writings. Really just waxing about life in the country, life just as a human being, and how we perceive things. I've seen in your recent YouTube video and a lot of your recent tweets, you're on an anti-truth campaign, and I really respect that because I understand what you're talking about there. But for those that don't, explain to our audience exactly what your mission is here by the anti-truth.
Well, it's like this, man. Back in the day even way back in the day before we even had written word, the only thing you knew was what you were told. And then once we had written word, we could start to remember things. So like when you had to do something, your brain didn't have to think it out fresh each time. You could read words that say, hey, this is dangerous, or here is how you plant food. And, that was all good, and people take these words and they think, well, this is the truth. And, that's what we have. The problem we have with every religion that gets out of control is people take the words of the religion, forget the spirit of it, and get hung up on the words and are like, this is the truth. The way you're interpreting this is wrong. You have to interpret it this way. Well, that was enough in itself, but now that we live in an age with internet and, 3,000 TV channels and all these different sources of information, there's just thousands and thousands of different perspectives we're exposed to each day. When you think about back in the, medieval times, man, people were lucky if they went more than 15 miles their whole life. Now we see thousands of perspectives every day of our life. Even if we don't even try to, we do. And everybody who shoots that perspective thinks they've got the truth. This is the truth. This is the real deal. This is what's going on. This is how it's happening. And the thing is, each person's truth is just their viewing of what is going on. So, none of it can really be pure truth. It's all cut with an individual's bias. So what I am trying to do is live a truth-free lifestyle. Now, some people would say, well, I don't want to, listen to these false sources. I want to get to the real source. You can't get to it, man. There's too many. You would drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what is real and what is not. Any news event you see, as soon as you see it an hour later, somebody's got a completely different, opposite, conspiracist take on it online that can seem completely valid. You cannot find truth. So what I'm trying to do to keep the stress level down, to keep the ulcers from building up, to keep from raising children that are afraid to go out of the damn house any day of the week. Truth-free, man. Just living. If I see it, I can believe it. If I hold it, I know it's real. Beyond that, that's somebody else's truth, man, and I'm not going to accept it. I'm just, no truth. No truth whatsoever.
Well, I think you stuck a key in your magic jukebox there just now and opened up a whole vault of conversation pieces that'll probably fill up this broadcast if you're willing to go there, because I agree with you on a lot of those points. What is truth? Is truth simply relative in every scenario? And I think it might be. Like all of the great answers to the great questions in the world that everyone asks, why are we so fucking important that we're the ones that have to figure it out? Maybe we can just possibly accept the fact that we're not meant to figure it out and find our own truth inside ourselves, you know?
Yeah, definitely, man. I actually, a couple weekends ago, for my wife's birthday, like a week later, we went up to D.C., and took the kids to the zoo up there. And we went into the room, it's a huge place, and, when you go to the zoo, the most disturbing animals there are the people. And we went here, and we were like, all right, we each had a thing we had to go see. And, my second kid, who's 9, she really wanted to go see the ape. So we went into the ape building, and I go in there, man, and, the ape is just like this big gorilla just sitting in the back corner. And I'm just thinking to myself, damn, that sucks for my man, And, then we went in this other part, and the, gorilla there coming out was just sitting there with his leg up holding it. And, all these people are like, oh, look at him, it's so cute. And I'm thinking to myself, I had just, written a story about a dude in solitary confinement and how, when you're stuck in solitary, your brain starts to do tricks on you because it just has to for, self-protection. You start to go crazy, And I'm thinking about this gorilla who's just locked up, and I'm like, damn, man, my man took a wrong turn and ended up locked up in a fucking cage for the rest of his life. And I don't know, man, we was walking around the zoo, and I was thinking to myself, we don't necessarily have everything figured out in the way that we think we have it figured out. And you look at these things, and I was like, damn, man, I wonder when one of these other animals is going to get a shot to run the show. But then again, maybe they don't want to run the show, and maybe that's what separates that from us. And who's to say that true progression is not getting to a point where you don't try to change anything and you just accept what is there and just deal with that?
Yeah, there's something to be said for just trying to make a better world with what you got.
Think about it. If you got 5 dudes trying to, let's say you got a house and you got a room, you're ready to have a baby, and you're going to tear out the back room where you used to play music, and you're going to re-sheet rock it and paint it, and that's going to be the baby's room. If you got 5 dudes there who look at that situation and are going to do the work, and then you got the one guy out of the 5 who's talking about how we can do this better, or we should do this, or what we ought to do, what we ought to think about doing is this, and what would make this go faster is if we have this other thing. And it just complicates the whole affair, man. You know what I'm saying? We've all been in that situation. It just messes everything up, and nothing actually gets done. So maybe it's better just to accept the situation. Don't try to figure it all out. Don't try to make it perfect. Just deal with what's at hand.
Yeah, absolutely. You got, anytime you got people in power over other people, there's always this level of mistrust, and so I think the people that are in charge of things, they're basically playing Risk up on top of a hill somewhere, and then everybody else is kind of underneath, and I don't think that they understand the perspective below and vice versa. But yeah, I'm with you there, man.
Hey, we're just all trying to get by, Some people figure they can tell others how to do it, and others don't. And what I try to do is I try to get by how I can, and I try to make my getting by not screw up anybody else's getting by.
That's it. And there's something to be said for just also trying not to fuck other people over. I think that's an unfortunate disease that you see in this human condition, is the level of greed and just the ability to somebody to fuck people over. I actually still think people are inherently good, but there's so many fucking poisonous seeds, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, man, because I had originally hit you up and said, hey, let me on your show again, man. It's been a while since I talked to you. And you were like, all right, cool, you got the YouTube video, you got this pamphlet you're doing. And I'll be honest with you, man, I don't feel comfortable going in front of people and saying, yo, you should give me money for this thing I'm doing, because of that very reason, man. Like, it's like people get the ability to psychologically justify very inhumane actions because they have to get a paycheck. And I've done it. I mean, we've all done it, man. We all compromise ourselves chasing that. I mean, it's common to all of us. And I feel bad about it because I don't want to support that. So basically the way I look at it is, what I'm doing with writing, I'm going to do anyways. I'd like to share it with people. I share it however I can. I mail it. I give it to people all the time for free as I'm able to. But I like to share it with more, and I just ask for support to help do that. I've got a shitty job like anybody else, man. Monday through Friday, I hate my damn life from 8 o'clock until 6 o'clock when I get home from driving an hour to my damn job. But I use this to keep it right. And it's like my second child, who I've mentioned a couple times tonight, she's a very sensitive individual. She's gets very afraid of things because she is sensitive, and things shoot into her a lot easier than they do other people who have that harder shell. And one thing I've taught her about, like I've been working with her on writing a lot lately and writing songs because she likes music. And I said, it's like when you're in your bedroom at night and you're afraid, you want to cut a light on. And she's like, okay. And I said, why is that? And she said, well, when the light's on, it's not as scary. And I said, okay. Now, when you're feeling these crazy thoughts and you're freaked out about things and you write a song, that's like shining a flashlight inside. So then it's not so bad. You can handle it a little bit better. So she's been writing songs now, but that's also the attitude I have about what I do is it's just what I got to do, man, And we all have that. Like, you think about, you think about the guys riding the road every weekend, hitting these little towns wrestling, man. Most of them dudes know they ain't never going to be on a WWE show. They going to be lucky to get to TNA, but they do it because it's those moments that make the rest of the week okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a beautiful sentiment about what you expressed with your daughter. I think that if you don't have that outlet, and I try to have several, probably too fucking many. That always seems to be my problem. Is I try to take on too much shit, and I don't feel like I can
relate.
Devote enough time. It's like you want everything to be perfect, and it's fucking not. But most of it for me is expression. Like I'm fortunate to have gotten on TV at a young age and got to do a lot of crazy shit and meet a lot of cool people. But all of that is secondary to the therapy that I get by going out there, and most of the time masking my real thoughts into a wrestling promo and getting my rages or frustrations with the world out on our opponents or whoever. It is me. It's me. But it certainly helps. Those are my thoughts. And if I didn't have that, I would probably go insane. So I totally understand where you're coming from.
Exactly, man. Exactly.
But you move the conversation along to wrestling a little bit. Let's stop there for a minute. I've been doing a thing here on the show called the Wildside Chronicles, which you may have caught on some of the prior episodes.
I have caught a couple of them, yes.
Cool. I appreciate it, first of all. But and then second of all, what I'm trying to do there is just build the history of Wildside and tell that story. Over time, when it's all done, I'm probably cut it together and make a something, whether turn it into a book or me and Bill Behrens have talked about what we want to do with it when it's all done. But right now it's content on the program, so a little bit of this. Let's go to the Wildside Chronicles. We talked about it a little bit last time you were on there, but just go back there. Really, the first time I encountered you was actually, I'd go on various message boards and things back in the day, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and promote our cards, and there was one, that Death Valley Driver message board, that's where I first noticed you and just your posts, and you seemed to be an intelligent guy, and then you wrote some reviews of the shows, and I was like, this guy's on another level. This guy is a guy I can really relate to, and I have ever since. But just like, hey, what drew you to wrestling in the first place as a fan? And then furthermore, talk a little bit about your experience with Wildside, and just give me a little taste of the view of a fan or a writer, admirer, outsider, whatever you want to call your relationship to us. But I'd just like your take on the whole experience there.
Well, man, I grew up watching wrestling with my old man, and I grew up in the Mid-Atlantic area, so that's what I watched. And honestly, all the crazy-ass people my folks hung out with all the time, all of them looked like Jimmy Valiant. So, wrestling spoke to me, and a guy like Jimmy Valiant spoke to me a lot. And it's just something I dug then, man. And as I got older, it kind of became something that I enjoyed the excuse. It's a weird little environment, man. It's a weird thing to exist, and I don't think the way it exists now is necessarily. Well, it's been made more into a business, and there's always things you lose with that. Even though it was always a business, it had a strange aspect to it before it became more of a national type corporate business. And I always enjoyed that.
It was that level of entertainment.
Yeah, and then when I was an adult, I enjoyed having an excuse to go somewhere strange and get drunk in a strange place and meet strange people. And I went to see a few things. I went out to Indiana and saw IWA and met some cool people out there. I still catch up with Necro Butcher. I try to catch up with him once every couple of years whenever he's coming nearby, and I mean, that's a good dude. You'd never know it from watching him wrestle. He seems like a nut. He's actually a chill dude. And I came down to Georgia that one time and checked y'all out, and it was like a throwback, man, because where I live, Virginia has got like a strange psychology, because you've got the fringes of D.C. in Northern Virginia, and you've got all the military installations in Southeast Virginia. So it's kind of like there's two aspects to the state. There's that part of the state, and then there's like South Side, where I grew up and still live on the edge of, and Southwest Virginia, which are more rural and kind of abandoned by the other part, so to speak. They'd probably give us to West Virginia if they could. But when I went to Georgia, it was like that. It had that same feel where it was simple people, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all, man. I mean, when you say someone's simple, that's seen as an insult, but I think of it like Simple Man, Ronnie Van Zant. That's a good way to live. You're keeping it simple, and just like we were saying earlier, why complicate things, Keep it simple. But I went down there, and that was just a hell of a good time, man. Like, the crowd was hyped up. They were into it. What I watched was good. It was an amazing time, man. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I will add that to the Wildside Chronicle archive to get another perspective, because we've been talking to the guys that have been involved with it, but, rarely do we talk to people that, saw it from a different perspective, and just like we were talking about earlier, perspectives are often than everything. Everything's really a perspective, so it's nice to get a different one than your own.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way y'all had them people worked up, I'm sure you got plenty of people down there be glad to tell you a thing or two.
Oh, yeah, and we'll definitely get to that.
I always had the attitude it wasn't a real wrestling show unless you had an old lady about to fight somebody. You got to have a couple people in wheelchairs sitting in the aisle. And you got to have some old drunk dude who's ready to go in the back and fight somebody, too.
And that's wrestling in the South. And a lot of, it's somewhat like that in the more rural areas of the Midwest as well. Some of that carries over because it's the same type of people. But it's something that really the northern crowds don't notice. They're all smart fans, and they, have a particular style they like, so they're they're very they want to see a certain kind of wrestling, and Southern wrestling is just its own thing. Now, there's an old saying that, of course, you can take the Northern style, which, you know, everything has its own merits. I'm not crapping on anything, but you bring it down south, and people will sit on their hands. But you take the Southern style to the north, and it's, I guess, because you talk about the more simple fan, and not in a derogatory way, but it's more simply laid out. It's not about all the flash and glitz and glamour. It's about reaching you in the guts and in the heart and telling a story and sucking you in and making you believe. And just like any good movie, television show, book, any story that you can tell that has a beginning, middle, and end, wrestling in the South really, really hits home on that to people, and that's something that I think a lot of other audiences don't quite grasp.
I think you might be right, man.
I know you're a fan of the old Southern style, so
yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah, fuck, man. Let's get a little plug-in for your website right quick while I'm thinking about it. To get your subscription to the Rojo Neku Word Fighting Arts, and the website is rojoneku.com, correct?
That's it, man. And basically, if you put Rojo Neku in Google or Raven Mack in Google, you're going to get rojoneku.com, which is my site, which has all my basically, that's like a store. That's got like my zines on it, which I call pamphlets. That's got books I've done. I just put out a book of haiku from Drunken House Painter Haiku, like earlier this year, I think. It's got, like, I do these railroad spikes that I carve haiku on that I don't sell to people because nobody buys them, so I usually end up giving them away. I actually been doing these things called hand-to-hand haiku tournaments, and we just did one the other night at this spot here in town. And what it is like I kind of host the events and talk my jibber-jabber at people publicly, and we have people just come in off the street, sign up to do these haiku things. And it's like a tournament. It's like a single elimination tournament. And whoever wins at the end of the night, I usually give them one of the haiku spikes because, you know that old saying, the pen is mightier than the sword? I was kicking back thinking on that one day, and I was like, how can I put them two things together? So I came up with these haiku spikes where I go get old spikes from beside the railroad. I don't pull them out of the tracks, but they, you know, if you walk any railroad tracks, they're all over the place. And I carve a haiku into it, so it's actually carved into it, which, you know, I'm shooting dust all in the air, and it's a fun way to write, too, because it's industrial as hell, it's messy, it's nasty, but I make these spikes, and I give them to people that win the tournaments. I sell them on that site. But if you do Raven Mack in Google, you might end up at my other site, which is RavenMackMillan.com, which is that's my shoot name. That's my site where my old site, all the stuff I've written for the last 9 years that I put online is all on there, and that's just a rabbit hole of chaos, man. Like, and I tag up each post so you can usually click on different tags and just, I mean, you could seriously smoke a fat joint and sit there looking at the nonsense I've written the last 10 years for days. I mean, you probably need more than one fat joint for days, but you know what I'm saying. There's a lot on there.
Yeah, no, I get to sometimes reading your stuff, and it does. You'll just sit there forever. And just this guy, fans, he's firing off a million thoughts a minute here, and he's really onto something. I think, like many pioneers, you're so far ahead of the curve in some of your ways of thinking that the world won't catch up to you for another 20 years.
Well, here's the thing, man.
People that get it,
I got the pamphlets because they are physical and they can be in your hand. I don't write online as much because of the whole truth-free aspect, and I don't want my thoughts to just be tossed into that void, because a lot of times that's all we're doing. You go online, it's 80 million people trying to sell each other things. You know how that is, and I don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so people can look up Raven Mack. They can go to my site. It's got my address. It's got my email. You can get zines. You can buy a single zine. let's connect. I'll put something in your mailbox that is physical that you can leave on a peach crate beside the toilet. And the zines themselves are like $1 each. So, like, you can drop $1 of, like, PayPal money and get some, like, fucked up thing to, like, leave laying in the bathroom, you know? So it's like trying to connect in a real-life way. And, I don't know, man. I'd rather have my writing be more of that just lays around in that way than to just throw it into the void, you know?
Like, it stimulates thought, and that's so important in this day and age of what you say with just all this fucking information just being bombarded at you at 1,000,000 miles a fucking second on the internet from 1,000,000 different perspectives. You know, it really is nice to be able to think, and I think the great art, whether it be writing, whether it be haiku, poetry, whether it be, you know, film, television, it really is asking the questions, and that's what makes you think, and that's what I like about your writing. You ask, to me, all the right questions, and going back to our earlier discussion, not saying you have the answers, but the questions.
Well, I try not to have the answers, man, because my answers ain't going to be your answers. I feel like
Exactly.
I don't want to tell people answers because then I'm feeding that whole truth thing, and it's more important to me that we all just try to figure out what makes us feel good and then chase that than for me to tell you, hey, this is what makes me feel good, you should do it this way or you're not doing it right. So I try not to have no answers, man.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, back to what I said, I wish more people would try to just understand that they don't have it all figured out and live their lives and enjoy them, because you're only here for so fucking long. And then who knows what happens? Nobody knows until you're there.
Nobody knows.
We spend so much time worrying about that we don't live our lives here, and that's, you know.
Nah, I hear you, man. I'm 40 now, man, so I'm hitting them decades where I can't burn the candle as hard as I once did, you know, and that's a hard thing to come to grips with. But I'm coming to grips with it, and I'm good with it, because it's like I can't do these things. You were talking earlier about having all these projects, and I've been that way too, where I got by for years on 4 hours of sleep a night. I can't do that no more, man. I got to shut her down sometimes and get into bed before 11, you know. It's just the nature of the older body, you know. And I'm okay with that, man. I realize now I can't do it all, and that's probably why I think the way I do now too, because I used to think, you know, the world is fucked up. I'm going to change the world. And now I kind of know better, you know. The world is fucked up, but I can't change it. And if I do, I'm just going to change it to a different fucked up. So what I try to do is just unfuck my little bit of the world as much as I can. And actually, you know what it's like? It's like a bunch of wire. They got all thrown in the shed and it's all tangled up. That's what all of us is. It's like a big, giant, tangled up mess of wires. You can't go get a new batch of wire. You got to take the one you got, and you slowly just got to untangle that motherfucker little by little. That's all we can do. And I'm comfortable with that, and that's what I'm doing, and I ain't standing here telling you that the way I look at it is a complete untangled piece of wire, because I am a mess, man. I am an absolute mess. I got bad tattoos, crazy thoughts, and I'm always broke. But you know what? I'm living good.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, and it is going to address a couple of things you said there. It is when you start hitting your 30s, life changes and the perspectives on life change, and you really start kind of understanding things better. And like while you're in your teens and your 20s, you're searching for the answers, you know. And then when you start to hit your 30s, you kind of realize that maybe the answers just aren't out there, and you can get gratification from life in so many other ways, and you know, the family life comes in, and that's why, honestly, this is the first Midnight Black Mass to air in the month of June. I'm trying to crank out 2 a month right now, but, you know, I'm stretched. I got a lot of other things going on, and I've still got to provide an important time for my kid and my wife, you know, in addition to doing, and then I feel like I'm cutting a good balance of it, but, man, you know, once you hit the era of that type of responsibility, your perspective on everything definitely changes.
It does, man, it does. But it's worth it. My oldest is 14 now, and she actually, you talk about hustling online. She wanted to go to England with her friends, so we did an online thing with her, Indiegogo, which is kind of like Kickstarter. And she did that to get money so she could go. And she went to England and Ireland for about 3 weeks. And, it was hiking. It was bare budget, And she came home, man, and, like, I'm seeing this kid that's my kid who was a little baby, and we've been bringing up and raising, and she's, like, blossoming into this, like, crazy little human, It's worth it, man. It's worth it. You put the nurture in. It's like a tomato plant, to be honest, not to minimize it, but, like, every year people got gardens, and they got these tomato plants that they take care of, and because they want that tomato sandwich. It's the same thing with a kid, man. You got to tend it, You got to take care of it. If you're not weeding it and if you're not watering it, you ain't going to get no good fruit off of it.
Well, absolutely, and there's so much other information, like, what we talked about coming in, that, you got to be there.
Don't let nobody else weed and water your kids, man.
Absolutely, no, because and there's too much of that going on. I think just the whole structures of society are to kind of pawn your kids off on everybody else. That's unfortunate because, you're really responsible for putting another human into fucking society. There's way too many shitty humans. So, we've talked about this before, but, we're on a mission to make cool humans and add to this society and Earth and not fucking destroy and tear it down.
Most definitely, man.
Fucking awesome. Well, I'd say we're wrapping up the time right about now, man, but always stimulating, engaging, and fucking chill and laid-back conversation with you, man. You are always welcome on the show. Always enjoy talking. Follow this man on Twitter, folks, and you can see his thoughts on everything daily. You just get a taste of what you're in for if you subscribe to him.
I tell you, people can get me on, I rambled a lot tonight, and my brain just thinks all types of shit all day long. But when I'm at work, I can't really write, so I got Twitter. It's SSVA Raven. Again, you can look up Raven Mack, and it'll come up in Twitter. But that's kind of where I babble my mind's devilry while I'm trapped in the old cubicle at work. So it's a good place to get a taste of me. People can check my site, but really, I'm everywhere, man. It's just that we're all just doing what we're doing. And if anybody listening to this had heard anything, they're like, yeah, I like what that dude's got to say, just hit me up. Let's connect. Let's bullshit ourselves, man. We ain't got to do it on no podcast. We ain't got to do it online. Let's just hit it up, man. I hope to be riding Greyhounds next spring for a project for about 2 months, so maybe we hit it up in real life, man. I'm just looking for people that we can feel like we are the same, we're doing the same thing. We always get stuck in these things where we feel like we're alone, but none of us are, man. Everything we experience, 1 million people has experienced it before us. We are all brothers and sisters. We will get through whatever crap life lays out in front of us. It's all good. But Raven Mack, you put that inside a computer, you will find me.
Fuck yeah, man. Fuck yeah. Just keep on doing what you're doing, brother. Keep on fucking asking those questions and, spreading those ideas and fucking connecting with the kindred spirits as you've been doing. And I will holler at you, man. It has been awesome. Thanks again.
Hey, I got a question for you real quick, though.
Oh, sure.
You recently went on a little camping trip, didn't you?
Well, it wasn't a camping trip, really. We went up to my in-laws actually live up in the Smokies, but we did stay up there and, me and the Bird Tribe fam here, we're thinking about hitting up the,
Joyce Kilmer Forest. You ever been down there? Isn't that down? That's in the Smokies. It's in the Carolina part, but I wonder if you knew anything about that place.
Not a lot, but I've actually got a buddy that has hiked up there, and he said it was awesome. That's really my only point of reference. But
they said they got like old growth trees. It's like 2,000 years old in that motherfucker, man.
Yeah, the crazy things that the fucking Appalachian Mountains can fucking bring. There's
place,
all the way up
Appalachia.
that Appalachian. Yeah, it is. It's a unique place. There's not another place like it in the country.
Well, hopefully I'll catch you up in them Appalachian Mountains some point here soon, Dan. I appreciate you having me on again, man.
Hey, man, anytime. Hit me up, brother.
All right, man. Be good.
All right, man. Have a good one. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Raven Mack here on the Midnight Black Mass, and it has been an awesome edition. Glad to be back with you. Hope to get back with you on a more frequent basis as we move this thing along. But, you know, I'm just touching base to let you know I'm still out here. Going to have another one up. Got more horror movies on the Muji Movie Minute coming up and other things. So we'll be back next week is what I'm shooting for, and that is the plan. Until then, keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold, two horns in the air. This is the Rev. Good night.